The fact is, crime, one of the most dangerous misconceptions of modern America is the belief that crime in black neighborhoods is some kind of inevitable consequence of poverty or systemic racism. That belief is not only historically false, it is deadly. Ideas have consequences, and bad ideas have victims. The fact is, crime was far lower in black communities during the 1940s and 1950s, a time when poverty was greater and overt racial discrimination was codified in law. Today we have more rights, more is the belief that crime in black neighborhoods is some kind of inevitable consequence of poverty or systemic racism. That belief is not only historically false, it is deadly. Ideas have consequences, and bad ideas have victims. The fact is, crime was far lower in black communities during the 1940s and 1950s, a time when poverty was greater and overt racial discrimination was codified in law. Today we have more rights, more programs, more spending, and more crime. The real question is not what has been done for these communities, but what has been done to them. So let us dispense with comforting lies and confront 5 uncomfortable truths. These are not slogans, these are steps. Steps that, if taken seriously, could turn back the tide of destruction and bring order to chaos. Step 1, restore the family. The rise in crime cannot be understood without understanding the collapse of the black family. In 1960, over 75% of black children were born into two-parent families. Today, over 70% are born to unmarried mothers. This collapse did not happen organically. It was incentivized. The so-called war on poverty, launched with great fanfare in the 1960s, penalized marriage and rewarded dependency. A mother would lose benefits if a man was present in the home. The results were predictable and tragic. Fatherless homes are strongly correlated with juvenile delinquency, gang involvement, incarceration, and school failure.
If you
PhD in sociology to understand that children need fathers. What you do need is the courage to say it and the will to undo decades of perverse incentives. I once spoke to a teacher in Harlem who told me her biggest problem wasn't curriculum or resources, it was discipline. And the discipline problems weren't due to income levels, they were due to the absence of fathers. She said, there's no one to back me up. In my own youth, growing up in Harlem in the 1940s, we didn't have much money, but we had order. I remember the older men in the community, fathers, uncles, barbers, all of whom saw it as their duty to step in and correct bad behavior. You didn't have to be someone's father to say, straighten up. That kind of community accountability cannot exist when men are absent. Things were so safe in those days that I used to sleep out on the fire escape during hot summer nights, and no one thought twice about it. Children went in and out of neighbors' homes freely. There was a sense of trust, a sense of responsibility, a sense of decency. That wasn't because of money, it was because of morals. Before the 1960s, black neighborhoods, despite poverty, were far safer, more cohesive, and more orderly. The problem is not merely economic, it is cultural and institutional. Step 2, reform education. In Washington, D.C., Dunbar High School produced outstanding black scholars and professionals long before desegregation. Its students excelled under rigorous discipline and academic standards. Today, public schools in that same city fail to produce even basic literacy in many students. Why? Because the public education system is less about education and more about political patronage. Teachers' unions protect incompetence, resist accountability, and oppose school choice with ferocity. The victims? Black children trapped in failing schools. Charter schools and school voucher programs have shown promising results. Institutions like the Harlem Children's Zone or Success Academy have outperformed traditional public schools in the same neighborhoods. The difference is not money, it is expectation, structure, and freedom from bureaucracy. I once interviewed a mother in Oakland who had pulled her son from the public school system and put him into a charter school. She worked 2 jobs to make it possible. She said he comes home talking about science and reading now before he came home talking about fights. Education is not a luxury. It is a survival tool. If the schools are failing, and they are, then crime becomes the next stop on the track. You cannot expect young men to stay out of crime when their schools are chaotic, their teachers are unaccountable, and the curriculum prioritizes grievance over grammar. Functional education instills structure and discipline in young minds. It replaces idleness with ambition. When students are taught skills, values, and critical thinking, not just slogans and ideology, they are equipped to contribute rather than destroy. Education gives them a path away from gangs and crime and towards self-respect and upward mobility. Step 3, end perverse incentives. You get more of what you subsidize. That is as true in economics as it is in human behavior. For decades, government programs have rewarded dependency, idleness, and irresponsibility. The modern welfare state has done more to destroy inner-city families than segregation ever could. Policies designed to help the poor have often created a permanent underclass. Public housing projects became breeding grounds for violence. Unconditional cash assistance removed any connection between behavior and consequences. In cities like Chicago and Baltimore, generations have grown up where no one in the household has ever held a steady job. Work becomes optional. Fatherhood becomes irrelevant. The result is not just economic stagnation, it is moral decay. In a Chicago housing project in the 1960s, a woman was raising 6 children by herself, each with a different father. When asked about the father, she simply shrugged and said, "That's just how it is." No shame, no sense of loss, just resignation. That is what cultural erosion looks like when institutionalized. In another instance, I spoke to a pastor who ran a re-entry program for ex-convict. He told me that the biggest obstacle wasn't the criminal record, it was the mindset. They've never seen responsibility modeled. They've only seen survival. If society continues to incentivize dysfunction, it should not be surprised when dysfunction becomes the norm. What gets rewarded gets repeated. Step 4, enforce law and order. There is no justice without order, and there is no order without law enforcement. The demonization of police in recent years has been one of the most reckless political campaigns in modern memory. In the wake of the defund the police movement, crime surged in dozens of American cities. Homicides rose. Innocent people died. This is not theory, it is reality. The so-called Ferguson effect, the withdrawal of proactive policing due to political pressure, has been linked to thousands of additional homicides, disproportionately affecting black victims. Ask residents of these neighborhoods what they want. They are not marching to defend the police. They are begging for more protection. The criminals are not philosophical about politics. They are practical. And when police retreat, predators advance. In a Brooklyn community meeting, elderly residents pleaded with city officials not to cut police patrols. One woman said, "I sit by the window at night and listen to gunshots. If the police leave, who do we call?" In the 1990s, New York City dramatically reduced crime through broken windows policing and increased presence in high crime areas. Lives were saved, neighborhoods were revived, but today those gains are being reversed in the name of political correctness. Civilized society requires the rule of law. It is not racist to arrest criminals. It is racist to tolerate anarchy where you would not tolerate it elsewhere.
This
Cultural responsibility. No amount of money or programs can substitute for culture. Culture matters, values matter. The abandonment of personal responsibility, the celebration of victimhood, and the glorification of street culture have created an environment in which crime is not merely tolerated, it is valorized. In earlier generations, black communities held strong moral codes, high church attendance, and respect for education and authority. Immigrant groups, whether Jewish, Italian, or Asian, who faced their own forms of discrimination, managed to avoid high crime by maintaining cultural norms that emphasize self-discipline, work, and family. Years ago, I spoke at a forum on cultural change and was asked whether poverty caused crime. I said, no, values do. The room went silent. I went on to explain that if poverty caused crime, then the Great Depression should have been a time of looting and chaos, but it wasn't, because the culture then did not tolerate it. Culture is not an abstraction. It is what guides behavior when no one is watching. And when the culture says that failure is someone else's fault and success is selling out, you will get more of the former and less of the latter. In South Central Los Angeles, a local businessman once told me he couldn't hire young men from his own neighborhood because of their attitude. They show up late, they talk back, and they don't take correction. He wanted to give back, but he was not willing to sacrifice his business to do it. That's the cultural toll. The result is a generation robbed of agency, robbed of accountability, and robbed of hope. There is nothing compassionate about perpetuating dependency. Real compassion tells the truth, even when it hurts. The answers to crime in black neighborhoods are not easy, but they are not mysterious. Restore the family, reform the schools, end perverse incentives, enforce law and order, rebuild a culture of responsibility. These are not radical ideas, they are time-tested principles. What is radical is the refusal to even consider them. The real tragedy is that we have replaced solutions with slogans, replaced discipline with indulgence, and replaced truth with sentiment. As I have said for decades, the question is not what government can do for black communities. The real question is what it has already done to them. Facts do not care about your feelings, but facts, if faced squarely, can save lives. Justice begins with truth, and until we have the courage to face that truth, no matter how unpopular, the cycle will continue. The time for sentiment is over. The time for sobriety has come. And the first step is telling the truth.